Hello everyone and welcome back to our tutorial Zoo. We're gonna see the difference between grid and non-grid pieces in Planet Zoo. Okay, so first we need to go into construction. In construction, the main example that we can have here is in architecture and walls. In walls, we will have different types of pieces, grid and non-grid pieces specifically, so we will talk about the grid here. Whenever you see this symbol here at the top of a building piece, that means that it's a grid item, this hash symbol. And you will also see it because when you pick up the piece, you will see like a grid around the piece where you're placing it. So if I place down this wall, you can see that I can extend that grid in basically any direction I want. I can also move the piece vertically up and down, but it will be moved at fixed intervals because it will still be on the grid. When you have the grid, you can also place the item here, like when you have one of these yellow lines, the piece can be to the left or to the right of these lines to have a perfect alignment for the pieces. So let's say that I want to build a rectangle here. I can take the piece, place it down, and if I want to rotate it, I just press C on my keyboard, the key C, and I basically create the shape I want based on this grid, like this. When the piece is on the grid, you should be able to adjust the grid to build more easily. For example, if you click here on any one of these grid items, they are all within the same group, so they share the same grid. You will be able to adjust the grid size and grid height over here in the settings. Here I have this piece selected, and you can see that I have a grid size of 4 meters and a grid height of 4 meters. That is what is currently generating this grid with the yellow lines. This is basically the size of the squares, 4 meters by 4 meters. But if I want to move the piece in a more detailed way, and I don't want just to be limited to those 4 meters, I can adjust this, and let me show you how this is changed. I go from 4 meters to 2 meters and then to 1 meter. And with 1 meter, I can have all the freedom I want to move this piece within a smaller grid. So I can do something like this, for example, and adjust it to fit my needs. Like this. Of course, you will need to find the piece that actually meets your building needs, because you will have 2 meter walls or 4 meter walls, and they may not perfectly align if you don't use those exact dimensions in the grid. With more practice, you will be able to anticipate the size that you need and how you should move the pieces. And you can also adjust the grid height. Let me show you that. If I want to move this piece, I can also move it vertically if I press the shift key. But you will see that it kind of jumps from one place to the next. It actually goes 4 meters up. You can see this. We are here. This wall is 4 meters tall, so it is jumping 4 meters. How can we adjust that? Well, we can change the grid height like this. And now if we go even lower, like 1 meter, we will have a much shorter jump here, so we can adjust things more precisely. Remember that since we're in the same group, all these pieces share the same grid, so that will make building a lot easier. You also have the option to adjust the grid height to 0 meters, so you will have like a smooth movement. The jump will be really small. That's awesome, right? You can also choose, when you're working with the grid, auto stacking. So if you want to place the wall automatically on top of another wall like this, you can choose auto stacking, and that should make the process of building a lot easier. If you're building like a tall building and you want to have more walls or a second floor, that should make the process a lot easier for you, especially for building facilities and for building like the reptile houses that we love and create. If you don't have this enabled, look what happens. Let me just delete this piece. If you don't have this enabled, I don't have auto stacking enabled, the piece will not be auto stacked. It will be at the same level, and I will have to move it manually. This can be helpful too if I want to have like details. Notice that here I can actually move the piece down and place it somewhere in between the other piece to create a different height, like this. That is for grid pieces, but the other type of piece that we have is a non-grid piece. These non-grid pieces are marked with this symbol over here. and they will basically tell you the dimension of the piece in its own set. Like here you can see this little small square filled here, but we have 3 little squares in the symbol. The smallest one is the darker one because here the piece is like the smallest piece in the set. It's a very small wall. Then we have this one, which is like an intermediate size, 2 by 2. And then we have the larger one, which is this one, and it has all the 3 squares or the 3 areas filled with color. The difference between these pieces and these pieces, which actually look very similar, is that these pieces are non-grid pieces, so they move freely around the environment, the 3D world. If you want to reposition them, you don't have any grid limitations. But the freedom also brings a bit more complexity because you can rotate them and adjust them in any direction or axis you want. So I can move it vertically, like I did with the grid, but now the movement is continuous, it's not on the grid. And I can also rotate it with a C key, like this. I also have the option to use angle snap, which can be helpful if I want to snap the movement to a specific angle. Here we have 45 degrees, but I can adjust that to 30 degrees. Usually to rotate the item, it's usually helpful to just choose 45, so let me show you this. If we go to the advanced move with the X key while I have the piece selected, I can just rotate it twice and I will go from vertical to horizontal in no time. That's basically the non-grid piece. You can also combine grid and non-grid pieces in the same building. Let me show you. I'm going to start building this like this. I'm gonna build this here, and then I'm going to choose a non-grid piece. Let's say that I want something like this. This is a non-grid piece, you can see it, but we're still inside the same group. So I'm going to choose this. And then I can just continue building on the grid. I am using the same grid, I can adjust the grid height and the grid width, and it's basically just the same building process. This also works for the roof pieces. You will have roofs that are grid pieces, and you will have roofs that are non-grid pieces and they just move freely, like this. Most of the roofs will be grid pieces. So if you want to have like an asphalt here, you can create a flat roof like this, and here we have a very simple building just for demonstration purposes. Great, so that's the difference between grid and non-grid pieces. I hope you liked this tutorial and stay tuned for more Planet Zoo content. I will see you in the next video.